Hello my dear students and welcome once again to another video for our class in object-oriented programming. In this video, I'm going to introduce you to the graphical user interface toolkit for the Java Standard Edition, which is known as Swing. This is relevant because through this, we can implement and manipulate pre-written classes and thereby exercise pure object-oriented programming through the use of the Swing Java package, all while learning how to create a graphical user interface for Java desktop applications. Let's get to it. So here we are once again in our Visual Studio Code editor and inside of a mygui.java file. Now the first thing that we need to do in order to use Swing is of course to import those package. The package that we're using here is the Swing package, and it does not belong to the base package in Java. And just like when we tried to use the scanner, it's not part of the base package, so we have to import it. In that same sense, we can also do that, and it's found in JavaX. JavaX stands for Java extension. So JavaX, that's Swing, and then whatever component you want to use. For this purpose, we'll just use everything, just to shorten our code. Of course, when you're writing real-world application, you don't do this. You should only import what you need in order to streamline the usage of memory. So let's start creating our GUI. So this will be public class my GUI, and inside let's create a main method. And from here in the main method, we are going to build up our graphical user interface. So the window, in order to have a window in Java Swing, that is called a frame. It's called a JFrame. So I'll create a frame 1 as a new JFrame. Now, this will not appear immediately because by default it is not visible. We can say frame1 dot set visible to true. So this is a method defined in JFrame, and we are invoking it here. This simply says that frame will become visible. But of course, we also need to provide the size of this window. So before we make it visible, we should say frame1 dot set size is the method to change the size of the window. And inside of here will be two parameters, an integer for the width. So for example, let's say have a width of 400 followed by the width, the width and then the height. So we're saying here that frame 1 as a window will have a size of 400 in width and 300 in height. We can also provide a title. Set title. And for example, my first GUI. Now, you can create a frame with a title as well. There is an overloaded constructor for the JFrame class that allows you to pass a string on the constructor, and this string will become the title. For example, instead of setting title here, when we created our frame, when we instantiated our frame, we can put a text there, and that text or that string will become the title of our frame. So when we try and run this program, it should display a window, and there you have it. You have the window with the title my first GUI, but there's nothing inside of it. At least we now have a window. But you see it appeared on the upper left corner because the positioning of a window starts at the 0, 0, and the point of reference is the upper left corner. So that's why this is the point of reference of the window, and its position is at the 0, 0 on the screen, and that is why it appeared on the top leftmost of our screen. But we can also display it or show it in the middle, and that is very simple to do by simply calling set location relative to, and it should not be relative to anything so that it will be centered, so it should be relative to null. All right, so with that, when we are supposed to run the program, but as right now the program is not stopping right now. By default, when you run a GUI, when you open up a frame, the program does not end or does not exit simply by closing a frame. That is the default behavior of a frame. The reason for that is it is possible that in your application you will be creating and displaying several frames at once, at one time. So it's not a good idea to exit the program when you close a frame, because again, you may have several frames. For example, there are 3 frames that are being displayed right now, and you don't want that when you click on one frame, the whole program exits. So that is why the default behavior of a frame is not to exit the program when it is being closed. So what we can do for now, since this is still running, I'll just click here to activate or to select this terminal and press Control C and press Y to end the batch or to end the job. So that exits out of our program. But but in this case, we want that when we click on the close button of the frame, we should exit the program. So we can also provide a statement to do that. So frame one dot, and the method is set default close operation. And inside of here, you can say JFrame dot exit underscore on underscore close. It simply says that the default operation when this frame is being closed is to exit out of the program. All right. So when we run this program once again, now it appears in the middle, and the size is not yet here, but when I click on close, you see the program exited. We also have to provide again the size, frame one, that's set size. That's 400 for width and 300 for height. And so when we run that program again, we get this. Actually, what happened was I set the size after I set the location. So it should be set the location, and then I'll set the size and then set the location. So this should fix right there in the middle. But you can also resize this like so. You can even maximize and minimize it. Okay, so we can change that behavior as well. If you want that your window will not be resizable because you don't want that the dimension of your window will be changed, because that way when you change the dimension, the content inside of it will be jacked up or whatever. You can also make a frame non-resizable. All you have to do is frame one dot set resizable to false. Okay, so when it's false, now the window do not have a maximize button, or it's disabled the maximize button. And when you put your mouse pointer on any corner, the resizing handle does not appear. You cannot resize this frame anymore. Okay, just like that. However, this is not really the correct or the standard way of defining a frame and a graphical user interface. The best way is to create a class and then extend that class to a JFrame or a panel. That's what we are going to do next. Instead of having to define your user interface in the main, you can define your user interface in the constructor. But first you have to do is export or extends JFrame here, and then inside of our constructor, so here we can now define, for example, the title. Set title, my second GUI. Let's define the size, 400 by 300. Let's default close operation to exit on and close. By the way, you don't need to. What's wrong with this? Hey, it's a comma. Okay, you don't need to put the JFrame anymore, and you don't need to do frame 1, frame 2 here anymore, because these are now called to its superclass, because my GUI is now a subclass of JFrame. So this is now accessible within my GUI, and these methods are directly accessible within my GUI as well. Okay. All right. Also the location, set location relative to null. Okay, and what we can do inside of the main is to instantiate itself, this one, and make it visible. So we can simply say new my GUI, like that, and make it visible. And when you run this program, it will output the same way, right? But this time it is more organized, and the building of the UI is right there on the constructor. Now let's put some component inside of here. Let's have a button. Let's have a button. So create a button by saying J button. So the name of the class is J button. We'll call this btn1, and we instantiate it like this. And also, just like when we created a frame earlier, we can also provide a string which will become the label of the button. So you say I am a button. Now we just created a button. We now need to put this button into a container. Right now this button is not placed on any container, so it's just floating somewhere, not being hooked into a fixed place. A JFrame is of course the ultimate container that we need, that we can control. We can put this button into the JFrame here, and my GUI is of course is a JFrame by simply calling add. However, we say add btn1. However, there are rules in the layouting of contents of components inside of a container. For example, in a JFrame, there is the default layout of a JFrame is border layout. Now this border layout is a rule, it's a layouting rule that lays out contents or components into the container in a way that there is positioning for each content. For example, there is a position called north position, and that means it is going to be placed at the top of the frame or at the top of the component. There's also the south position, the east and the west position, and the center position. Aside from that, there are other positions like the first, the second, the first, the last, and so on. So, but there's also a default position in this case, the center. So if we are going to add button 1 without telling where to put it, it is going to be placed on the center. Now I don't want that. I want this button 1 to be placed at the top. So I want it to be placed at the north. In order to tell which part, we have to say that it should be placed on the north. And this north value is, there's a constant that is going to indicate this one. And that constant is of course found in the class border layout. So let's also include that border layout here, import. And border layout is inside of Java AWT. So java.awt.border layout. And we can call that constant here, border layout dot north, like so. We can also put another button at the south. So let's create, instead of button, let's create a text field. A text field is also done using JText field. So I'll just call it text field equals new J text field right here. All right, and let's add this text field at the south of the frame. So say add text field border layout dot south, like so. So now if we try and run this program, we should see a button at the top. There you go. And a text field at the bottom, right there. Okay. And of course, when you say west, we put the component right here, east right here, and the center right there. We can also change the layout manager. That's called the border layout. This one, this is the layout manager that is being applied on the frame. That is the default layout manager of a JFrame. However, there are other layout managers like flow layout. So let's try and use flow layout instead. So let me remove this first and this, and let's change the border layout to flow layout. The way flow layout behaves is just like you're writing text. So you know, when you write text, it keeps on going from the left to right, and when it reaches the right margin, what will happen is it will go down one line and continue on. That is the behavior of using flow layout. So we can change the layout of a JFrame by calling set layout, and in here we can instantiate an instance of flow layout. So you can say new flow layout, like so. So now when we add our button and text field, we simply say add btn1. We don't have to tell any positioning because the flow layout is going to control the positioning. And then say add text field, like so. Now if we run this program, we should see a button and a text field side by side. See, that's the button and here's the text field. And the text field is very small because flow layout will simply shrink a component according to what is required to display it. All right. So that is it for the text layout, the text field and buttons and other components. There are other components such as label. So let's create that one also. JLabel. For a JLabel, you also need to provide the string. This is a label. You can also, so let's also add that. Add label. Another is you can also have a text area. So the text area okay, let's also add that. And many others. There's that combo box, list box, tables, and many other UI components that you can use in your application. All right, so there's the button, there's the, oh, did I add that text area? Yeah, but the text area is so small probably. That set set preferred size, and here we need to provide a dimension, dimension, and let's just say 200x and 50y. But of course we also need to import dimension. Let's try. There you go. There's your text area. Alright, so that is it for your introduction to graphical user interface using Swing in Java. I hope that you try and create your own UI for the first time. Put some components in there. Also read documentations about the layout manager so that you will have an idea of how to lay things out on your graphical user interface. So that's it for now. Thank you so much for watching and see you again for the next one.